Thank you for joining me for episode 4 of Build Your Poetry Manuscript with KMA. I am KMA Sullivan, founder and publisher of Yes Yes Books, and today I'm going to be talking about the walk-in. What to do in those first few pages of your manuscript in order to engage your reader's attention and, importantly, in order to engage the editor or publisher's attention. More and more of the submissions that I read every year include epigraphs at the start. And now it's not one, it's not two, it's 3 or 4 quotes on that epigraph page. And I'm going to be honest, I'm not a fan, and I'll give you some reasons why. In my opinion, poets include epigraphs on that opening page for the wrong reasons. A lot of epigraphs show up, it seems, because the quotes are in conversation with the book. That might seem interesting, but actually it's an impediment to getting to your work, which is why we're there, why we've opened the book. Another reason I find epigraphs problematic is because often they appear to stand as a kind of ethos, right, rhetorically, offering an authority, encouraging the reader or the editor to acknowledge the authority of the poet. But you're quoting other writers. This is not your own work. And regardless of how much the reader or the editor might love the writer who you're quoting, that authority doesn't actually convey to the manuscript. Sometimes epigraphs are used to summarize the topic or topics that are present in the manuscript. That is also not a good reason for an epigraph to exist. Now, epigraphs still make it into a lot of published work because in the end, the poets are the deciders. Publishers, we may ask for a poet to cut down the number of epigraphs or strengthen the selections, but if it's clear that epigraphs are important to the poet, we probably aren't going to say, nope, no, you can't have that. So you have to say no to yourself. Try not to be distracted by your love of the quote. But here's a reason to have an epigraph. And in my opinion, as per always, just throw it in the trash if it doesn't resonate with you. The reason to have an epigraph is if a quote opens the reader's mind to what is ahead. Sometimes that does happen. I've seen epigraphs serve that purpose, and it's a fantastic moment. So yay epigraphs in that instance. But that's not mostly what I'm seeing in manuscripts. And while poets appear to love epigraphs to start out their work, a lot of the editors I've spoken with feel similarly to myself, that they're unnecessary. If there's a sense of false ethos the authority doesn't convey, then that's even weakening the entrance to your work. You will build the authority through your work, and it's important to have confidence that you can accomplish that. Beyond the epigraph, the walk-in includes the opening pages of your work. Now that can look like a couple of different things. You can have a standalone poem that sits in front of the rest of the collection. You don't have to. That's just an option. It's a particularly interesting option if the collection itself is on the more experimental side. And then the opening poem can actually be less experimental in form and a little easier to enter. And so it gives kind of a soft walk-in to the rest of the collection. Some folks use the poem that stands in front of the rest of the collection as a kind of summary. It's important to be careful about that. If you think of an essay that you read that has a summary at the front, and a lot of us are taught to do that, dang, that's some boring stuff right there. And you certainly don't want to bore your reader. That's the opposite of what you want. So that poem that stands outside of the rest of the collection, if you're choosing that direction, should orient the reader to what's ahead. But that is not the same as summarizing what's ahead. Whether you have that standalone poem or simply the first poem in your collection, they're serving similar purposes. First, they are grabbing the reader's attention. They engage the reader. They engage the editor. Now, what do you need for that? First of all, it has to be a strong poem with fresh language, absolutely. The challenge when submitting a manuscript is to give the editor reasons to keep reading. So you've got to show them up front what you can do. So the opening poem, whether it's a standalone or at the start of the collection proper, needs to engage the reader. Having said that, though, I will also caution that the opening poem should not be what I would refer to as a tour de force, the big poem. It should be the case that you are building toward the big poem or the big poems. That brings me to the second thing that these opening poems are doing. They're teaching the reader how to read your work. Similar to a video game, right? Most of us have played video games, and most video games have different stages, different phases. And in those early stages, we're learning how to play. We're learning how to succeed. We're learning how to understand the environment. That is also what the opening poems of a collection are doing, ideally. It's unlikely that you're writing a book that is somehow immediately absorbable or consumable. That I don't think so, because you're getting to unique moments. You're getting to unique, fresh language. And that takes a little practice for the reader to understand what you're doing and to be ready for those big moments. So the opening pieces need to be kind of a gentle walk-in, which show them how to read the work. Now, this is a balancing act, because of course, I'm not saying that those opening poems should be so easy, so consumable that it requires no work, it requires no opening up of the reader's mind. No, the opening poems also have to be extremely engaging in terms of language, in terms of surprise. You're hooking the reader in those opening poems, but you're also preparing them to read the rest of the manuscript. So that is a hard balance to achieve. I'm not going to lie to you, that is, but it absolutely can be done. And for sure, it's easier to accomplish that if you have this in mind, that you are walking the reader in, that you're engaging their interest and walking them in. Please be confident that your work is worth this effort. Writing the poems was hard. In many ways, ordering and revising across a manuscript is harder because it's tedious. It can be exhausting, but your work is worth this effort. Be confident in that. Thank you for joining me today. Have a great rest of your day.